Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade, and we're going to deal with that fraud Triple H. Because MVP exposes that Triple H said no to a return of the Hurt Business. So we're going to go through this, and we're going to couple this with some conversation about the way black wrestlers are presented in WWE. Because this is always going to be a sensitive subject and people are always going to talk about it. So we have to discuss it. And we're going to couple this with an article by Big Nasty Alfred Konuwa from Forbes that says, since WWE NXT featured its black talent, it's seeing a spike in viewership. So we're going to couple these two things together. And let's talk about first Triple H not wanting to reform the Hurt Business and MVP sort of implying that Triple H is racist. So, on the MVP posted a picture of the Hurt Business. A fan responded, "Can't believe Vince effed this up. I assume it was him." MVP responded, "Triple H had the power to fix it," and then put a shrug emoji. Another fan said, "Should have kept y'all together. Damn you, Vince." MVP said, "Triple H had the power to fix it. He chose not to. Go figure." So, just from these first two comments, you see what the general idea is. Vince is the enemy. So, we're going to blame Vince for the Hurt Business breaking up and not being put back together. But a lot of things that Vince didn't want to do, Triple H changed on. I mean, Vince didn't want Dakota Kai or Io Sky or Johnny Gargano. He didn't want none of those people. Triple H brought them back. You know, there's tons of things. You know, Vince didn't want the King of the Ring tournament. Not really. Triple H brought it back. You know, so you're looking at things that Triple H has the power to change, and MVP is saying we need to focus on the person who has the authority to do these things. Now, I'm of the belief that the Hurt Business was probably broken up for a reason. There probably was some idea behind why they were broken up, but they never got around to it. But since then, it's not like these guys have gone on to do much greater things. Hell, you fired one of them, and you can't bring them back? You can't reform the Hurt Business, really? Here's another response. As much as I would love to see the Hurt Business back on TV, the only way I'd want it back is if Schultz and Benjamin is back in the fold. It ain't the Hurt Business without him. Once he's back, let's run it back. MVP said that's the only way. The current regime didn't want it either. Another shrug emoji. Another fan said, MVP, you got to talk to Hunter, Nick, and William and get the band back together with Lashley, Shelton, and Cedric Alexander. MVP said, we did. He said no. Another fan said, can we get the Hurt Business back? MVP said, Triple H said no. Again, he's really putting the onus on Triple H. He really wants you to realize this is not a Vince McMahon thing. This is a Triple H call. He doesn't like the Hurt Business. Or he doesn't like MVP. Or he doesn't like Bobby Lashley. We'll talk about that in a second. The next comment said, the Triple H era is emasculating black men. I'm really hating it. Then MVP says, you see it. Another response is, what noise do we have to make for the Hurt Business to happen again? MVP says, none. It's over. The powers that be made that clear. Another fan says, somebody like you doesn't get to be a world champion, which is the quote from Triple H's promo with Booker T. Now, I want people to stop doing that because it was likely a scripted promo. Why are we now trying to use that as a real thing against the real person? It was a scripted promo. But MVP said 100. So let's go back to this one. The Triple H era is emasculating black men. I'm really hating it. And MVP said, you see it. Because the black guys who are really featured on WWE is back to New Day, who are clowns, and R-Truth, who is also a clown. And this has led to a lot of people saying, what is going on in WWE? Where these guys are now the focus. Now, a lot of people who are defending Triple H, they'll say, well, Lashley is now, teamed up with the Street Profits, so they're not doing the Hurt Business again, but at least they're doing a serious black stable. And I'll say to you, people who are saying that, where did that lead? They spent weeks on that. They brought in B-Fab. They were supposed to be heels at first, but because everybody loves Lashley and everybody loves the Street Profits, they turned them babyface, and then they just kept losing. And then they stopped being featured. The same thing happened to Omos. Omos was beloved when he was with AJ Styles and that little makeshift tag team that they had. Soon as Vince was completely out of the picture, Omos and MVP both just basically disappeared. Even New Day, they're the only ones who are really featured regularly in terms of black talent that are kind of pushed, and they're like right there smack dab in the middle where they win some, they lose some, they win some, they lose some, and they've been doing New Day forever, right? Now, they're a little bit more serious now than they used to be, which I will give Triple H credit for giving them a little bit more character, a little straightening of the character where they're not as goofy as they were under Vince. But the idea that Triple H is emasculating black men, I'm not sure where we get that from. Just for the fact that you don't like R-Truth. Well, there was a comment, I believe, that R-Truth made recently, where he was kind of disappointed in his career. It was on TikTok, and I believe it was earlier June 2024, where a fan asked R-Truth if he was happy with the way his career turned out. Because, he's in his 50s, And this tag team title run that he's currently on with The Miz is more likely going to be the last run he ever has. And R-Truth responded, I guess I'm mad at myself when I think about where I am and where I want it to be in my career. So R-Truth, the elder statesman of all these guys that we're talking about here, these black wrestlers, is kind of unhappy with his position as being sort of the comedic foil. Even though he's really good at it, even though people love him, he didn't see himself as being this at 50 some odd years old. And even though we all enjoy R-Truth and we think R-Truth is funny and we think R-Truth is great, that is something that we need to consider, because almost nobody talks about why is R-Truth still doing comedy in his 50s? Is that the only way that he can add something to the product? We've seen serious R-Truth. We've seen that it can work. But he's more over as this character, this delusional, somewhat idiot savant type of character. And Booker T also was very reflective. There was an article that he did for The Undefeated, where he talked about his disappointment specifically with losing to Triple H at WrestleMania, what was that, 19? And how he just went along with it. Because it ended up being okay for him in the long run, because he ended up becoming world champion. But it was his moment, he felt, that he missed. And so you see regularly these black wrestlers come out and say, yeah, it would have been great if this wouldn't have occurred. Or if that wouldn't have occurred. But then you also see guys like the New Day. And New Day is very controversial because Booker T doesn't like New Day. In that same article in The Undefeated, he said WWE is racist for even having the New Day. That, they're essentially clowns. And a lot of black people have gone on record and said basically that they're offended by the New Day. But the New Day themselves are as legitimate as the Hurt Business. And what I mean by that is New Day are really friends. This is really their attitude, their behavior, the interest in anime and video games. The bond that those three guys share is legit. They're legit friends. This is what they would do if they were not wrestling. It's hard to say that this is what R-Truth would be doing if he was not a wrestler. That he would still be doing sort of goofy skits. Now, in terms of the Hurt Business, MVP talked about why it worked. And it worked because all of these guys were legitimately friends. He said on January 2023, he says, you know what? Why the Hurt Business worked? Because it was organic. Me, Bobby, and Shelton are really friends for 15 years. A brotherhood across years, companies, and countries. Shelton had a relationship with Sid, and Shelton vouched for him. We adopted Sid. The relationship wasn't contrived. So when people attack the New Day, look, I don't really care for the New Day. I think the act is stale. But their friendship is real. The Hurt Business friendship is real. And you can have this sort of diverse view of black males. You can have the black male nerd, you know, who's into video games and comic books and stuff like that. And then you can have the serious businessman black dude. Your Booker T's, your Hurt Business, right? The problem that we have is that Lashley is pretty much the only one trying to bring that real black businessman sort of vision to the company. Him and MVP are trying very hard, but they're not getting enough time. As I just mentioned, Bobby Lashley was brought in, and you know, him and the Street Profits, and then the ball was immediately dropped. It was thrown in the bin pretty quickly, actually. So I actually sympathize with Xavier Woods, who said after in defending the New Day, because they were throwing pancakes at one point, and people said, okay, these guys are clowns, they're coons, they're chucking pancakes, and Xavier Woods basically says, look, man, we're asking for a blank slate. I believe was his actual words. We want the ability to just be ourselves and to do fun stuff and to do interesting things. But they have the reputation for being two things in one. One, people see them as clowns. They see them as coons. At the same time, there's other people who see them as the woke black guys in the company, because they did the kneeling with the fist up for George Floyd during the pandemic. Something that Vince McMahon was down for, by the way. Big E said it out of his own mouth that they told Vince that they were going to do this and he was okay with it. So it's almost like there's no way to win when you're talking about dealing with black people. If you let black people do whatever they want and then they disappoint you because they turn themselves into, let's say, Crime Time, which is another thing that continues to happen, or they decide they want to be Kamala, then it's racist, even though it's something that they chose to do and they choose to continue doing. It's one thing if it's like Saba Simba, which is, you know, Tony Atlas was given some sort of African warrior gimmick that was not him, that was not his idea. He was just broke and he needed something to pay the bill, so he went and did Saba Simba. You can say that that's racist. But New Day and Crime Time, these are the ideas of the guys who are in the group. So if you don't like them, you should be mad at them. You shouldn't just be saying, well, it's racist, they're coons, blah, 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 blah. You can't win that way. And I actually agree with Xavier Woods that every black person is a blank slate. Just because of what their skin looks like doesn't mean that they should have to be one way. So I completely disagree with the concept of Triple H emasculating quote unquote black men. I look at it from this perspective. They're emasculating themselves. You're a grown man. R-Truth. I mean, I love the guy. But if you're 50 some odd years old and you don't want to do the comedy gimmick no more, just pull the plug on it. You made enough money, go home. Everybody who's a fan, and here's the thing. People will get mad at me for saying that, but who else is going to stand up for you but you? What am I going to do? What are you listening offended going to do? You're going to complain about it on Twitter? Nothing's going to actually change. You're going to have to do it yourself. So if you're upset about being a comedy character R-Truth, change it. Now, I don't want to get too far into R-Truth because he's just one of the guys that I wanted to bring in. Booker T did comedy too, you know? He did comedy. The whole stuff with Stone Cold Steve Austin was comedy. You know, King Booker was comedy. Everybody does comedy to a degree. And that was the one thing about old WWF that I like. I like the silly stuff. There was a video floating around recently. It went viral again of Crime Time dancing around in a circle with Vince. It was Crime Time, Jonathan Coachman, and Teddy Long. And they were dancing around Vince and William Regal. It was from, I forget, it might have been like 2007, 2008 WWF. And people was like, oh, that's racist. I was like, you see two black dudes in wife beaters and two black dudes in suits. They're showing you the duality of black men, 2 black men in positions of authority, and 2 wrestlers who are wearing jeans and boots, who are sharing an experience, dancing around these guys, and in some ways mocking them, but also having fun. And your first thought is to say that they're racist. This is racist. So I want to be one of the people that takes racism seriously. Just like I take pedophilia seriously, I take real sexism seriously. I don't just throw these words around. So no, I don't think that Triple H is emasculating black men. I think that these dudes are doing it to themselves. Some of these guys come up with these gimmicks themselves. Some of these guys come up with this presentation themselves, or they're happy with their presentation. R-Truth is one guy who came out and said, "Hey, I didn't want to do this." But the New Day, they love it. They think it's fun. They like doing this stuff because they get to be different from, the generic Nation of Domination kind of black guy. Mark Henry was another guy who did both. He did Sexual Chocolate. He also did Hall of Pain. If he were like a regular actor, you would say he's got range because he can do a little of everything. You would say that about Booker T too. If he was like a regular actor who was in a comedy, like Robert De Niro, he can do, what was that? What comedy did he do? Like, what's it called? Meet the Parents or something like that. But he could also do, a mobster movie. He can do both. Why can't you let black people do both? Why can't you let black people have the opportunity to do whatever they feel like they need to do? Or whatever is in their heart? As long as the company isn't forcing them to do something that is offensive, I guess you could say, I'm okay with it. I don't really care. Now, when it comes to platforming black talent, NXT's been doing a tremendous job lately. And according to Alfred Conaway, this is the reason why NXT has been so successful in terms of ratings. Let's get into this article. It was written June 21st, 2024. Now, he has a history, your boy Big Nasty. He has a history of doing this. He wrote an article back in 2019 when Kofi Kingston was the champion, claiming that Kofi's title run was equaling to bigger ratings for SmackDown. I don't know if that was true or not. I'm not about to go back in time and look at it either. But in this article, the 2024 NXT viewership is driven by black talent. He talks about the quarter hours, the biggest quarter hours in the company were aimed at black talent. When Javon Evans won the Battle Royal, and when Kalani Jordan wrestled Mi Chen or Mia Yim, both of whom are half black, for the women's North American title. Now, when it comes to that first one, Javon Evans and the Battle Royal and everything, the first quarter, Joe Hendry popped up in that quarter, and he ended up doing massive numbers. As far as upon, recording of this video, it was at like 17 million views on Twitter. That's just Twitter. So you could probably say, all right, Joe Hendry probably had a little bit to do with some of that. But he talked about the main event drawing, and that basically the black talent is drawing for NXT. He said, quote, "The entire spectrum of blackness was represented during this quarter." And this quarter being Kalani Jordan, Mi Chen, and Obafemi and Wesley. They all were in the same quarter. And he said, and it translated to the highest viewer quarter among 18 to 49 demos. He says, while it's difficult to directly conclude that black talent is the sole reason for NXT's ratings surge, NXT's ratings increase has come at a time when WWE is giving many high-profile, dedicated pushes to black talent. Then Trick Williams says, quote, "It's just a great time, us being real, us being authentic, and people loving it. And I love the people, so it just works." And Alfred Conaway also mentions the wrestling club, which pretty much every black wrestler from Sasha Banks to MVP and Bobby Lashley has done something with. Talk about them going viral. And he basically just talking about the blackening of NXT and how that has led to a ratings increase. But he also juxtapositioned that to AEW and their presentation of Swerve Strickland. Now, when we talk about NXT, you talk about a very young audience. You know, they're not hampered by the stuff that, you know, when you talk about New Day and R-Truth, there's not a lot of that in NXT. Now, you do have Idris Enofe and Malik Blade, who are kind of the clowns of NXT. They're doing a gimmick where one of them broke a mirror and he's got 7 years bad luck or something stupid like that. But you also got Trick Williams, who's on the top. He's charismatic. He's jacked. He's the star of the show, clearly. You know? Carmelo Hayes, when he was down there, he was the star of the show, and it was clear. You know, even if he wasn't the champion, he was still the focus of the show. And this was before we started talking about, you know, NXT's ratings increase. So it's part of, well, they're pushing black talent, but it's also that they're pushing black talent that they invested time in. They invested energy in. Look at how the difference between this and what I was talking about with Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. They invested almost no time into them. They gave them no pushes. They gave them no focus. And guess what happened? People stopped caring. It went from people chanting Bobby Lashley's name because they respected and loved him so much to now people forgot he even existed. And Triple H did that. Look at what he's doing with Bianca Belair. Look at where she was positioned when Vince was running the company to where she's positioned now. She's in a tag team now with Jade Cargill, basically training her own replacement. Because we already know once Jade gets to a certain level, Bianca's going to get shoved to the side. I talked about this pretty much every time. Bianca's my favorite female talent. Triple H never liked her. He was never a big fan of Bianca Belair. He didn't push her when she was in NXT. So it stands to reason that maybe Triple H just doesn't like these particular black talents. Maybe he's not a fan of Lashley. Maybe he's not a fan of Booker T. Maybe he's not a fan of MVP. Maybe he likes New Day. He likes R-Truth. That's why. But then some people would say, well, doesn't that prove his racism? He doesn't want black people who take their craft seriously. He wants clowns. But as I just mentioned, maybe New Day are serious enough. They are serious. They're just being themselves on television. So when we talk about black talent and their opportunities, you know, this is something that is a serious issue, and it always will be, because people won't let it go. They won't offer New Day or any other wrestler that blank slate that they're asking for to be either Orlando Jordan or Farouk. You know, there's nothing wrong with being either one of those guys if that's who you truly are, and if that's how you connect with the audience. At the end of the day, it's a show. But let's get back to the original subject. MVP puts Triple H on blast for not backing the Hurt Business. And without hearing Triple H's side of the story, we don't know what really was going on. What is Triple H's ideas? Maybe he has some kind of idea for Lashley and the Street Profits and saying, I don't really like the Hurt Business. Let's try this with some younger guys, because Cedric Alexander is a young guy. Okay. But MVP isn't. And Shelton Benjamin isn't. And maybe you want to use Lashley, who is up there in age. He's like in his mid-40s. He ain't going to be around forever. And you want to use him to get some younger guys over. Okay? And you say, well, the Street Profits are perfect. Okay, Carmelo Hayes, I think they did a little something with him. At first, they teased it. They didn't go through with it because people started, you know, running around saying it's like the Nation of Domination or throw all the black guys in one stable. But they teased it. I think they also teased Trick Williams. But if he had a plan, then I'm okay with him not reforming the Hurt Business. But if there was no plan and there's no reason why this couldn't be, he's just a bad booker. And this is what I've been saying for weeks and weeks. Why would you just leave money on the table? You got 3/4 of the Hurt Business still on roster. You got MVP down in Mexico with Big E right now doing stem cells because he wants to continue wrestling. So you have opportunities there to do something with these guys. And if you're not going to do anything with them, why not reform the Hurt Business? And it's not just because of racism, but I'm not going to rule that out. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
MagMongoSlade. Best house I ever drew, Daddy.